Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, Senior Internal Audit Advisor for AuditBoard, and welcome to another in my video series on Agents of Change. I'm joined today by a colleague that I've known for almost 2 decades, Dominique Vincenti. Dominique is the Vice President and Chief Audit Executive at Uber and has been in that role since 2019. Before that, she was the Vice President of Internal Audit at Nordstrom. And before that, head of global internal audit at FINCA International, a financial services organization. Before all of those assignments, Dominique was the chief officer of global internal audit practices at IIA headquarters, and that's where I first had the chance to get to know her. Dominique, welcome to our Agents of Change video series.
Richard, thank you so very much for having me, and it's always a pleasure after 20 years to have chance here and there to sit down with you, talk about the old days, but also debate and contemplate what's still out there for us to pursue. So thank you very much.
You know, Dominique, in my book, Agents of Change, I take the position that internal auditors should be seen as agents of change in their organization. And I define agents of change in the internal audit profession as those internal auditors who are catalysts for transformation that creates value within the organizations they serve. What's your view on internal auditors as agents of change? And is that how you would define an agent of change in internal audit?
Being an agent of change is baked into the definition of internal auditing. If you go back to the 1999 definition, which is still the definition that guides us all, it says that we are an activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. So it's right there. So I would absolutely take the definition that you have of an agent of change. Said differently, I would say that an agent of change in internal audit is somebody who embraces fully the definition of internal auditing and does not forget to execute accordingly. If one does that, then one is probably an agent of change in the profession. Larry Sawyer had, said many things about the profession, but I think that he said at some point that internal audit or the internal audit function can be anything the director of internal audit wants it to be. There is a lot to unpack in that very provocative statement. But what I retain from those words spoken like 50 years ago now is Larry Sawyer already back at that time was clearly telling the internal auditors of the world, you need to be on the move all the time. You need to be creating new and different. That's your job. Go and do it.
So from your experience, how receptive are members of management to internal auditors taking on these change agent roles? Do they prefer to see internal auditors sort of stay in their bean counting box, or are they comfortable that we get out and we facilitate change in the organization?
So maybe I've been lucky, or maybe this is what I was looking for, but all the organizations I worked for, it's because at some point there was a match, and there was a match between my vision of internal audit and what internal audit could do, and the aspirations of those charged with governance, whether executive management on board or boards of those organizations that I had the privilege to join, expected. So I cannot really say that I experience resistance from management or resistance from the idea that internal audit would be a partner in change. All the organizations I worked for, that's even true of the IIA. I remember very, very distinctly when I joined you and Al and Bill, the IIA was again at a turning point. And change was on the horizon. And it doesn't mean that change is easy, but I think that, the leaders I've worked with were always open to change. And the lessons learned to me all those years is that when I have not been successful at being a catalyst for change, it would be totally unfair for me to point the finger to the leaders of those organizations. At the end of the day, the person that failed was me. And in hindsight, when I was not successful and when I analyzed the reasons for my lack of success in some of the changes that I wanted to initiate, it's because I had a big vision, but I was not sweating the details. I could not influence properly or tell the story of what I was trying to accomplish in ways that would enlist people's support. At the end of the day, when you want to be a change agent, you can have the best ideas in the world. You can have the best ideas of how to implement those ideas in reality, but you have to do that with and through others. And the greatest difficulty is to convince them. And every time I failed is because my influencing skills were not up to par.
You mentioned Bill Bishop, and he's another iconic figure in the history of our profession. And Bill had been in his role for almost 12 years. And I think perhaps the most telling indication that he was a change agent is that even on in the twilight of his tenure as the II president and CEO, he reached out and recruited a brilliant young lady from France to come and join our staff. And so you came, and you were also very much a change agent there.
I was an elephant in a china shop. And that was
I learned a lot.
Of Bill. That was very, very brave of Bill, for sure.
Before internal auditors can be change agents or seen as effective change agents in their organizations, they have to be change agents in internal audit itself. It's sort of like Agent Change Thyself, I think is the name of that chapter. And I would ask, do you agree with that as a person who's been a CAE now for so many years? And then secondly, what are some of the things you've done to be a change agent in internal audit?
I will share two things that I've tried to do, I still try to do, to be that change agent with an internal audit. On a macro level, and usually with the management team, the internal audit management team, on a very regular basis, there are three questions that I like to revisit continuously. I never take for granted. Why do we exist? That's really the mission question to some extent, but I think it's good from time to time to go back and say, why do we exist? The second question is, where do we aspire to go? That's the ambition question. Is again, we are constantly in the move. I don't remember who said change is the only constant. If you stand still, the world is going to move anyway. It's not going to wait on you. And so as far as we are concerned, where do we aspire to go? And the third question is that, okay, if we're clear about why we exist and where we aspire to go, how we're going to win. And that's really the strategy question. So that's how, to keep a sense of motion, a constant motion within the internal audit team, that a kind of a technique, if you could call it a technique, I try to use. At a micro level, something that has been I found to be very successful in the past, in particular, where I had the chance to take it really to as far as we could go, is really to embrace what is known by the car manufacturing industry as the kaizen culture, born in Japan and very famously embodied by Toyota. Which, here in the US, we call it a culture of continuous improvement. But actually, if I remember well, the word kaizen in itself, the Chinese character, means a change for better. And I much prefer actually to keep that as being the culture that we infuse at a micro level within the team. Like everybody in the team needs to know that they are empowered every single day to make micro changes to how we do things and how we can do them for the better. So that's the two things that I've been using as ways of bringing a change spirit in internal audit.
I've been talking about this concept of capacity multipliers for a number of years, things that internal audit can do transformationally to enhance its capacity to address more risk. And the one capacity multiplier that I think towers above all others is technology. Using technology as part of internal audit's mode of operations in carrying out its responsibilities. How have you used or deployed or leveraged technology as a chief audit executive in the organizations that you've served?
So definitely data and automation is paramount to the multiplying factor that you're talking about. Interestingly enough, not easy to bring at the forefront of internal audit teams, and I found it harder to convince our internal audit teams nowadays of the importance for everyone in internal audit to be data and technology savvy, experienced, and competent. Way harder than it was probably when you and I started in internal audit, and when we had to embrace true technology, which was you and I mean, and that sounds really funny, but we started at a time where things were done with paper and pencil.
Oh, I started even before you. I think we were chiseling things in stone tablets when I started. Yeah. But so, no, you're right. When I started, the most sophisticated technology we had in the office was a calculator.
When I started, where technology was a separate team. It was called CATS. Computer assisted auditing. But it took, I would say, less than 2 years. Like suddenly, the mid 90s, early 90s, depending where you were, where you had to pivot from paper and pencil to having your own laptop and become pro at Word, Excel, or their equivalent of that time, starting to write macros and suddenly, and we had no choice, because we knew that if we were not embracing it, we would be irrelevant. And CATS teams disbanded because now CATS was all of us. Now, mind you, data science and data analytics and technology nowadays has become so complex that I kind of understand somewhat. It's not so much the resistance, like, wow, but how much competency do I need to have? I have to know so many things. And now you want me to be a data scientist, data analyst, a computer and technology expert, and a data engineer and a computer engineer. So obviously not all of this, but there is a minimum that is very, very important for us to have, so that we can, again, harness the resources that exist in our organization. But fundamentally, before being an expert in the technology, is knowing what you want to do with the data. Knowing what data exists out there, what is the information that you're going after, and then what you can have it do for you so that it works hard for your audit. Whether it helps you to describe a situation, whether it allows you to predict future trends, whether it allows you to identify unknowns. But that part is not technical. That part is what we've always had to cultivate in internal audit, which is the analytical skills.
Bring out your crystal ball, Dominique, and tell me, what do you think the next 10 years in internal audit could look like?
It could be bright, but it depends on us. Again, let's not point fingers. If the next 10 years turn out not to be as glorious as they should be for internal audit, I think we'll have only one group of people to blame, and that will be ourselves. When I do my own risk assessment, what keeps me up at night, those famous questions that we ask leaders, sometimes we need to ask it for ourselves.
Yes.
There was always one answer, and the answer is relevance. Am I relevant? Is our team relevant? Is what we do relevant? And that's what scares me the most about us as a profession. Are we doing everything that we need to do? Are we rethinking why do we exist in ways that is going to keep us relevant for the business community, the community at large, and the stakeholders in the community, regulators, authorities, the general public? But it's high time for us to educate our leaders within our organizations so that they can be our champions. And by being our champions, they're going to serve their organizations better, but also they're going to help the internal audit profession to be recognized outside as this critical pillar of good governance.
Dominique, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that our audience has already seen, if they didn't already know you, just how passionate and how informed you are on the issues facing this profession. So thank you for doing this, and would love to have you join me again sometime.
With great pleasure. Thank you, Richard. And go and be creative. You out there, innovate, be change agent. The world of the profession is in your hand. Take good care of it.